making sure that the RPM's around 1.5, and then bring up the clutch smoothly still. After watching this video, you're going to avoid making these mistakes that lots of people make on their first few lessons. If you're getting to a stage already on your lesson where you're going to second gear, a common mistake that you see a lot of learners do is they'll get to their junction like here, and then they're so focused on the junction that they've forgotten to gear down. And then when they try to move off, they end up stalling and thinking, oh, what did I do wrong? I've done my clutch properly. And then when another gap comes, they'll try again and then end up stalling and think, oh, what's going on? It's because you are in second gear. Let me show you how to easily avoid making this mistake. This time, instead of leaving it in second gear as I'm approaching the junction, I'll think about going into first gear on the approach before I even stop. That way now, when I'm focusing on the junction, I'm already in the gear that I need to be in, and then I can move off smoothly in first gear. If you train yourself to do that all the time, eventually you won't even have to think about it. Your body will just go to first gear on the approach to junctions and when you're going really slowly. That way, it's one less thing to think about, one less thing to forget, and you're less likely to stall that way as well. So once you got comfortable in first gear, you want to think about going into second gear. And knowing when to do this can be a bit hard sometimes because you're just concentrating on controlling the car. But once you hear lots of noise in the car, like now, I'm hearing lots of noise and my RPMs are above 2000, it's time for me to change gear now. And what you see some learners do, they'll either leave it too late or they'll slow down too much before changing gears. So let me show you. It's time for me to change gear. I think, oh, it's time for me to change gear now. And then they'll come off the gas, they'll take too long, go on the clutch, and then take too long with the gear change and bring the clutch up. And by now, I don't know if you can hear that, the car's rumbling, it's making quite a lot of noise because it's going too slow for second gear. So when you're trying to go into second gear, make sure first of all, you got the right speed, and usually you can tell that because the RPMs are above 2000. And then once you decide to change gear, you want to do it in a nice quick way. Let me show you what I mean. So like now, once it's time for me to change gear, instead of taking ages by coming off the clutch and coming off the gas, clutch down, and then doing a slow movement, once I decide it's time for me to change, I've got my clutch ready. I'm not pressing it down yet, but off the gas, clutch down, into second, off the clutch smoothly, and then back on the gas. That way the car doesn't struggle, especially going uphill. You don't want to take too long with the movement to change gears because then you can lose too much momentum, and then by the time you change into second, you're no longer at the correct speed for second gear. So one of the most common mistakes that people make is going into the gear incorrectly. So when you're moving off, you need to go into first gear, and the easiest way to do this is by placing a palm like this, pushing to the left and then up. What you see a lot of people do is they'll grab the gear stick and then push up like that, and then now it's in gear 3. That's not the correct way to get into first gear. In the first place, make sure you put your palm like this, push towards the left and then up. That way it's always going to go into first. When you're moving off now, you want to make sure that you're doing your checks properly. So now we are on the left hand side and we want to move off to the right hand side. So we're going to finish our checks on the right hand side, making sure we check over our right blind spot as well. So what a lot of learners will do in this case is they'll just get the car ready and then they'll look here and then they'll move. Or sometimes they won't even look there. This is a mistake. Get used to always checking around and finishing on the side that you're moving off towards before moving off. So like now, before I move, I'll check my left side, my center mirror, right mirror, and then over my right shoulder. And then if it's clear, then I'll make my move. Once it's time for you to actually move off, you want to make sure that you're doing this smoothly. And a lot of learners struggle with this. And it's all about how you control the clutch. So if you're controlling the clutch in a bad way, moving the clutch up too fast or too high, the car's going to go too quick or it's going to stall. Let me show you what I mean. So like now, if I'm trying to move, let's say I've done all my checks and I try to move now, what you see a lot of learners do is they'll do that and then the car is stalled. Now the engine is off and they're thinking, what's going on? What did I do wrong? It's because you lifted the clutch up too fast and that's why the car stalled. So to avoid that, count to 3 in your head when you're moving off. So once the car starts moving and you count to 3 and you bring up the clutch slowly, it won't stall that way. So let me show you. So once you've done the checks, clutch there and it starts moving, 1, 2, 3, and then that way the car is not going to stall. You see I brought it up smoothly and it doesn't stall. And you notice that I only use the clutch to move off. Get used to using the gas from early on and it's going to be much easier and smoother for you in the long run. So there I moved off with the clutch. In some cars it's okay to do that with, but if you learn how to use the gas and the clutch together, in the long run you're going to be driving a lot smoother and a lot quicker at traffic lights as well. So let me show you. I'm trying to move now. Instead of just using the clutch by itself, I'm going to use the gas as well, making sure that the RPM's around 1.5, and then bring up the clutch smoothly still, and then that way it's a lot smoother. And as I move off now, the car can pick up speed a lot easier that way too. So once you move off, the next thing you want to learn how to do is stopping properly. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with at first. So let's say I'm going to pull over on the left between these two cars ahead of us here. So I'm going to signal left, and then what you see some people do is they'll get here, and then they'll get to like here, and then they'll brake really hard, and then the car stalled because they haven't got the clutch down and they braked way too hard, and now the car has stalled. So you can avoid that by doing things properly, and let me show you step by step how to do this. Especially because you're in first gear, we want to put your clutch down a lot earlier, maybe even first, before we start braking. That way we should avoid the stalling, and also I'm going to show you how to brake nicely so that you don't stop halfway in the road as well. So we're moving now, and we've been told to pull over on the left. So I'm going to check my center mirror, left mirror, and then I'll signal left, and then I'll start bringing my speed down. So I'm off the gas now, so my car is already going slow. And then around here, I'll put my clutch down, and then really gently as I can, I'm braking, and then squeezing it gently. And then now that it's come to a full stop, another mistake that you see some learners make is once they come to a stop like this, they just think, oh yes, I'm done it. Oh. And then they think, oh, why is the car moving? It's because you haven't secured the car, which means going into neutral, putting the handbrake on, and then you can come off the pedals. If your car is still in gear, you need to keep your feet down on the clutch and on the brake, and then handbrake on and neutral. It doesn't really matter which order you do it in terms of handbrake and neutral. You can do it neutral and then handbrake, as long as it's done properly, and as long as the car doesn't jerk forward. Once you've done that, then you can bring up the pedals smoothly, and that's how you stop properly. So here we're turning right, so mirror, mirror, signal. So you're gonna get taught how to stop here as well. Some people will stop way too early like this, and now I can't really see anything because I've stopped too far away from the giveaway line. What you want to do in this kind of case is go forward enough so that you can see this line, the giveaway line is above or just underneath my wing mirror. That way I can tell I'm by the giveaway line now, and I can see left and right properly. And if I couldn't see, I'd creep forward a bit, but now that I can see properly, I would move off now. And what you see some learners do is they'll bring up the clutch really quickly like that, and then the car goes flying off into the road. That's not the best way to move off smoothly. If you're on a junction like that and you want to move off smoothly, you got to control the clutch just the same way as you are moving off from the pavement. It's the same kind of moving off when you're at the junction as well. Let me show you what I mean. So this time I'm going left, and I'm going to make sure that I put my clutch down nice and early and brake gently. So when I'm moving off now, I'm not going to bring my clutch straight up, because remember, if I do that, let me show you what will happen. If I bring my clutch straight up, you see, I end up stalling in the junction, or sometimes even worse, I might end up stalling halfway into the road. So to avoid that, what I'm going to do instead, once I decide to move, I bring my clutch just to the biting point like there. I'm not using any gas at the moment because I want to go nice and slowly. And then once it's straight, I bring my clutch a bit more and then add some gas now. So that way it's nicely controlled.